I don't have that.
In Google. What do you mean?
Well, it's not in the choices of choosing another account.
Okay. So did you go to Google and type in Google Suite?
I'm in Google Drive, but it's just not me. It's all the other me's.
Hang on, go on FaceTime.
Hang on, I'm just gonna try to see if I can. I hate this. Every single time I go into it, I don't have what I'm supposed to have. Next. Password. Thanks. I'm logged in.
Did it work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Sandy. How are you?
Oh, how could you complain with a day like today?
I don't know, but somebody will be.
You'll probably bet your bottom dollar on that. Nice, too nice. Should be down the beach.
Yeah.
That's tomorrow. That'll be me tomorrow. I'm going to take half a day tomorrow
Nice.
and take some downtime. Now that we're allowed to move around too, I'm actually going to look at taking some time off. I haven't had any since August last year, so
Okay.
feeling a bit tired. Hi, Ian.
How are you, Sandy?
Good, mate. How you going?
Very good. Did you hear back from our mutual friend?
No, not yet. Not yet. No, I'll be making a decision. I think it's this Friday. So they didn't want me to contact them. They wanted to reach out and contact me. So I'll leave that with them. And if I haven't heard from them by Friday, then I'll reach back out and contact and see where they're at.
Might do a sneaky check-in phone call for you.
It's all good. If you like, but you don't have to. That's okay. I'll chase him down anyway.
No, but
So-
it's not a bad thing if Ian's got a relationship, just to call to say, even text, you happy with how Sandy's helping you so far? Just to have another Fletcher's touch point without let it going too long.
Yeah, he's actually already done that too. So he has made that contact, and we got the feedback. But they were looking at bringing in. It's just a little out of our area. It's just down in Berwick, so a lot of people think that Yarra Ranges is too far away. So when you look at it geographically, it's only 20 minutes, so, which is nothing really for property management. Like I think once I relet a property up in Kalorama, once now that COVID's starting to lift, I'm going to pick up a property down in Doncaster as well. So they'll give me that one because it'll be a dual property, dual owner. So, and that's only 20 minutes the other way for me. So 20 minutes, half an hour, which is really nothing on the grand scheme of things. But yeah, if you want to reach out and touch them, sure, that's cool.
I think, what was that restaurant you went to on Saturday? It looked mighty fine.
Yeah, Italy One in Burkwell, Camberwell. It's always really nice there. It's like a city quality restaurant. It's really lovely, and the service, the food was just exceptional.
Awesome. Thanks for the heads up.
Yeah, we've never ever had a bad meal there. It's always really nice, very very Italian, really nice food.
Awesome. Glad you enjoyed.
Yeah, it was our first meal out in 5 months.
Crazy. What a year.
We'll just give it another minute and then we'll get going. All right, everybody, we might make a start if you want to hang up your calls and lose your distractions and on this perfect Melbourne day. Welcome, everybody. Hope you've had a nice weekend. It was lovely weather, and I'm outside again because it's just too nice to be inside. I've been inside most of the day. We started Law of the Buy-in last time, and I'm just going to quickly recap. We'll finish Maxwell today and continue on our journey. So remember, we talked about, you got to get people to buy you before they buy the vision, find the dreams, and get the people engaged. Ultimately in anything, if you don't get buy-in, if you don't get people who are committed to it, then things don't work. So you got to get people believing in it and into it. And if they believe in the leader, then they'll follow. People are more into people than they are into causes and things for the most part, but not always. Remember, they're good leaders, and I'm just going to go past the video, which we did already. So there are leaders who are better than their visions. There are visions that are better than their leaders. Best thing is be a good, strong leader, have a good vision that is practical, that people can do, difficult people and managing plateaued performers is a real art, and it takes a lot of time and skill. So I just thought we would go through it with a bit of time. And difficult people, I showed you last time the 3 different types of people you have. You have your plateaued performers, you have your variable employees, and you have your rising stars. They can all be difficult. That issue of where they are on the spectrum of achiever, plateaued, or problem is not the same as handling difficult people, because achievers can be the most difficult people you have. Sometimes you got difficult plateau as well. So it's equally applied across. The issue is when somebody's a variable employee, you have more employment challenges to deal with that person. And how do you deal with that person? Obviously, setting a good example. We talked all about that in session after session about being a good role model, and that there's nothing you can do better than set a good example. Do as I do. It's more powerful than do as I say. You should try to resolve it. You should try to help it along. Sometimes you can make it a bit worse. Sometimes inaction usually makes it worse. Doing nothing is usually not the best solution when you have a problem. Sometimes you realize you need to just let it sit a little bit. Maybe it's not the time to try to fix it right now. Maybe it's the time to stop it. In other words, maybe addressing the difficult person that they are causing issues. They need to stop what they're doing. You want to have a good chat with them tomorrow or after the weekend, but they need to stop. They need to go home. They need to just break the habit, the cycle they're in at the moment. But doing nothing is usually not a particularly good solution. The take immediate action thing is about the sooner you resolve the difficult issue, the better it is for everybody, including yourself, because the more you stew on it, the more you stew on a landlord who's a problem, a tenant is a problem, a buyer is a problem, a colleague is a problem, then it doesn't get better. It just plays on your mind. You start to work up all these different scenarios. You start to get more intense about it. You get more uptight about it. You better whenever you can and just deal with the action, get it over with, but thought through, plan, Being consistent means a lot of things. It means you can't favor people over others. It means you shouldn't be inconsistent in the way you deal with the same person, because then they don't know what they're getting. The leader that comes in one day cranky, one day really happy, one day flippant, one day not, one day strict, one day not, is very difficult for people to deal with. They found that leaders who try to be reasonably consistent are better, but it doesn't mean you're the same to everybody. We've said that before. Some people need to be dealt with a bit differently. The way they respond is a bit different. The way your relationship with them can be a bit different. But trying to be consistent with those people consistently is a good thing. We talked about communicate to death. Everything that you do to try to help resolve a problem should be constructive. Even if you don't have the answer, it's often just to be saying, I want to be constructive about this. We have an issue. I can't say I actually got the solution right now, but we have an issue we need to resolve. And I'd like you to help me work through it. Maybe together we can come up with the best outcome. But at the moment, it's not working. That's constructive. That's positive. You don't always have to have the answers, and you're best to work up answers with people anyway. As we know, anything that's difficult, when somebody reaches it themselves, they're going to have more buy-in than if it's just dropped on them. So trying to work up the problem and the solution with somebody is often a more powerful way anyway. We talked about don't lose it, don't disciplining in public. It's not a good thing. It's good to teach, but not to discipline in public. Good to help people, show them things. Losing your cool, as we know, when you go red, you're just behind the 8 ball. It just doesn't help you. It doesn't get you the outcome. You don't perform at your best. You're back on the back foot because you've now done something that might be could be seen as a bit of harassment or something. So you got to try to keep your cool. Don't pass on the problem isn't necessarily fair, because maybe it's to be delegated to somebody who's more appropriate to handle it. It might be if you had an HR person or an expert to help you. It might be their specific team leader. It doesn't mean you're abdicating, but there may well be somebody who's better placed to handle it than you are. Sometimes when we have client problems, I'll direct it to Rob Fletcher or Jeremy, saying, I think you're better to handle this one than I am. Most of the times I handle them. Obviously, I'm back into handling most of the HR sort of issues without having a full-time HR person. But when we had one, I would often go and brief them about the concern and let Tasha go and deal with it. Pass on the problem means just abdicating, not being responsible, pushing it off to someone else and just walking away. That's not what you should be doing. Make sure people are adequately trained to deal with it is really important. You know, whoever has to deal with it, they need to know how, so they don't make a bigger botch up of it. We had an incident years and years ago at Fletcher's, like long time ago, 15 years ago, and the person who was handling it, I was away. They did a really bad job of it, and they just really inflamed it significantly more. And they said things from a leadership point of view which were bordering on harassment, and all with good intentions, just not properly trained to handle it. I got off a plane in Sydney to wake up, to come up to a storm, and tried to deal with it on the phone on the way home in the car, and eventually settled it down when I got back to the office. But, the people that are responsible for solving problems should have some good training. That's why we put everybody through this. We hope that some of it sticks.
You finished that report yet? I think.
Okay, we've done that. All right. Our plateaued performer. Remember, they're not growing, they're doing their job, and they're at a position, and it might be good or it might be bad. It might be good if they're at the bar or above the bar as to what's expected. If they're below the bar and they've leveled off too soon, or the bar is raised and they haven't come up with it, then you have a problem. And I think to be frank, in this dialogue, we're talking about a plateau performer who's a bit of a problem as opposed to you're really happy with them. So this is like continuing on dealing with a difficult person who might be someone who's been doing the job for a long time. They do it regularly, and you've got some outcome problems with them. And you can look at that variable performer a little bit in this slide too. But inherently, a plateaued performer is not a problem. Often they're the opposite. So just understand that. So we sort of see that maybe in this situation, their behavior is a bit different. They seem to be losing motivation. They seem to be behaving different than they were. Maybe they're not achieving the outcomes that you expect or have been expecting for a long time. Low levels, of initiative and activity. Effectiveness, not so good. These are just signs of, maybe they do their job, but they're just not interested in everything else going around them. And that's concern at times, because if they just sort of come in and go, and I'm doing my job, don't bother me, is not a pretty healthy sort of dialogue. It's better when they do take an interest in the other people around them and their company and how it interrelates to other people. They just seek nothing else, just in a not a positive way, don't want to take on challenges or responsibilities. And I can see that, I've seen that with some people who work with me, who I give them something and I get the big sigh. And it's like, your workload isn't that much that you can't handle taking on something. What's the problem? And then you invariably get, oh, I'm not sure I like the job anymore. And, you get all of that. And it's certainly something you get not from people who've been doing the job for a long, long time, but perhaps when you have someone new in the job after a year, 18 months, they sort of feel like they maybe have hit a wall. The person who's been in a job for 5 or 7 years and they like it and they know the challenges and they take on new responsibilities from time to time, that's probably not the person we're talking about. Getting to know the person, obviously, we talked about it before, because the more you sort of know, the more you understand, the more you see the differences, the issues. What motivates them? Why do they do their job? How come they've been happy doing the job for the last 2 years and now they're not? What's changed? They want more responsibility. They've got some issues off the job. They've got a new colleague they're working with they don't like. They're getting pressure from the family to make more money. There's all those things that come up. And if you don't take time to try to understand them, then it's hard to motivate. It's hard to manage the person. I said it before in an earlier session that if somebody resigns and they've not really spoken to anyone, they just walk in and say, look, here's my resignation. They really don't have a good relationship with anyone that you could say is a mentor, or, you'd hope people, if they are dissatisfied or if another opportunity comes along, they'd sit down and talk to you about it and say, look, I'm seriously considering this opportunity. It looks like a good one. I'm not sure I've got more opportunity here or not. I like my job here, but more money, more this, more challenge. When you get those people talking to you about those things, then there's a relationship and maybe you can fix it. Sometimes you can't. And sometimes I say, look, I'll take that job. I think it's a really good job. I think it's a better job than you got now. And I can't see any opportunity for you to grow further here. And I would say that to people when I think they've hit a wall here. Like they're not going to go up. There isn't more for them to do. We can't add more to the job, really. We don't want to pay more in that role. So, I think sometimes it is time for people to move. Why are they feeling flat? Remember, there's nothing inherently wrong with a plateaued performer, but there is something wrong with an unmotivated one, or one who's not living up to the bar. So what is it? Try to work it out as, if you're not going to get a listing, you're a salesperson, it doesn't help to just start throwing out the 100 reasons why they should give you the listing. What you should do is try to find out, why am I not getting the listing? What is it precisely that you're telling me that you want to choose A over me? Price, the marketing schedule, the relationship that you've had so far, the referral you were given. What is it? Because the only way you're going to overcome it is to really know exactly what the cause is. And that's the same thing with a person who's not performing the way you want. What is the reason? What can you do to help understand it best? If you do understand the problem, how can we then explore it to get to the best outcome? What can we do to give you more challenge, to get the position to where it could pay a bit more, take on more responsibility, do some other things? Maybe they've got issues they've got to resolve at home. Maybe there could be recommendations how you can help them do that, whatever it might be. Don't abdicate your responsibility to help them. Now, that's not the variable performer who goes up and down, who you sit and talk to and decide either they're going to go up and stay up or they're going to go and inflict their goodness on some other organization. But it's the person you want to keep, person you care about. How do we help them? Well, we certainly don't help them by losing interest in them or ignoring them. Or if you know there's been a problem and you just let it go and you don't deal with it and you don't come back to them after speaking to them. If you think you've resolved it, you need to go back a few days later, whatever's appropriate, and say, have we hit the nail on the head? Have we killed the beast? How you feeling about it now? All of those sort of openers to make sure that it's on the right track. And yes, I'm feeling better. I'm not quite there yet, but yes, I'm on the right track. I appreciate you checking in with me. How about I do that again and again in another 3 or 4 days or next week? It is very important to do. To me, that just goes without saying, is you support the people that you have. There's a belief out there that this grass is always greener. For employees, think that other employers, it's probably better. Employers think there's another employee they can get who'll be better. My experience is not really. If you got somebody who's doing the job pretty well, you should do everything you can to keep them if you believe that you should keep them. If you don't, if you think that they're past it or the role's past them, then they should move on. And you should help them move on in that case. But if not, if you think that there's more for them at the organization and vice versa, then you do what you got to do to help make it work. And this whole idea is that a lot of people live on the plateau and there's nothing wrong with it. As long as the bar is at a level that the organization is satisfied with and they're meeting that bar. There's some do's and don'ts. Do believe that you can help resolve it. I mean, pretty much every problem can be resolved. We're not nuclear physicists and brain surgeons. Most things involve people, and we can work out how we can move something around or fix something. Most of the time. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you have two people in an area that they just don't like each other, and they're never going to, and they're never going to work well together. And it may not be possible to move one to another area. So sometimes you can't, but a lot of times you can fix it if you make that effort. The more you get to know them, the more you explore ways to solve it. They can't abdicate responsibility either. You can provide guidance and direction, but they ultimately have to be the ones responsible to get out of their mire. And they have to be willing to do it. And you should be helping them, but they need to do it. That ongoing support. Don't start with the belief you can't fix it, or the problem, or if I ask, I might be being too obtrusive, or that's crap, because somebody's got to resolve it. When I see somebody in the office that doesn't look their usual self, I'll always say, "Are you all right? Is everything okay? Yeah, we haven't spoken much of late, or you haven't looked too happy. Your emails are brief." And often it'll come out. And again, don't give up too easily. So let's just, look at these two. There's just two parts. Take a couple minutes and think about somebody who you work with. You might not be someone who they report to or anything like that, but someone you work with who you think, they're probably in this category. They just do their job, and maybe they're not doing his job as well as they could. The job has changed a bit and they haven't lifted. Just even if you have to just make an assumption about something, that just to work up a little exercise, just think of a little role play you could do about somebody who you can help try to improve. What do you think you can do about it? Identify their issue and what can you do about it? Hopefully you have some circumstance at home, at work, particularly at work, of course, some social situation where there's somebody not really living up to what they should do. What do you do? Just spend a couple minutes and see if you can come up with a little bit of a plan, and maybe we'll have a bit of a chat about that. All right. Who'd like to share something with us? Don't mention who it is or anything, but anyone want to share a little example that they looked at, or any comments about that?
I'll go, Bradley.
Okay.
For me, I thought of a particular person where this seems to happen, and it always stems back to perhaps them not feeling confident or, familiar with things that they could be doing. For example, certain softwares and processes that they may not have a full grasp of. So rather than wanting to excel at it or properly understand, they kind of just drop off at a certain level of, bare minimum of what they understand. So when this has happened before, when I've addressed that and they kind of go, well, it's actually because I don't really understand, this program or what I'm meant to do in this scenario, and then offering up, further training or webinars. I found that once they had some more confidence in that area, they were a lot more willing to put more into that area.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, it's like identifying that, they're not doing the work, but why is it? And
Yeah.
it's the cause is the software issue and the lack of familiarity with it. You'd like people to take and be naturally more initiative to say, hey, I don't know how to fully use this. Can I get some more help? But it's good to identify that when they're not like that.
Yeah.
Good. Others, anyone else have a comment they'd like to share with us?
Bradley, I actually thought that you could take the same approach about this sort of thing as you do about the conflict resolution or the feedback. So, as you said before, understanding the person, understanding what may be causing the person to feel the way they are, understanding them, understanding why, and then preparing what you want to say to that person. Making a time to discuss it with them, and then discussing it with them and getting their feedback, and then coming up with a plan to resolve it.
Yeah, that's excellent. And sometimes it might take 2 goes because you may not know what's causing the issue. So you sort of let's meet, talk about it.
Yeah.
All right, let's go away, create a plan, come back and talk. Yeah, very good.
Mm.
Others, anyone else have anything they'd like to add in?
I think, Bradley, in a sales perspective, in our sort of roles, if you're not hitting certain targets, you've got to know what the targets are. So sometimes, for example, appraisal numbers or how many doors you're getting into, what actions are you doing to enable that? So sometimes you need to have a discussion with people or a refresher yourself at times. Are you doing letterbox drops? Are you doing social media? Are you doing X amount of calls, whatever it might be? So having that conversation, the person plateauing might not realize that they're only doing 3 out of 6 different things.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, fact finding, why, narrow down, identify the key issues. Good. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Law of victory. Number 15, closing in. Leaders find a way to win. Well, you'd hope so. You'd hope that they don't give up, that the goal is to try to, whatever the win is, the right outcome for people, keep the company going in the right direction, keep individuals going in the right direction, solve problems. That's what you're trying to do. Excuse me. I think anybody who strives for things realizes that winning is the goal is to get the right outcome. And often, as long as you put in the right effort, that'll happen. And if it doesn't, well, that's okay, because the right effort went in and you accept that. This not winning is not acceptable is probably not words I would fully choose to use. I think not giving it your best is not acceptable. Allowing a bad outcome when you could have had a better outcome is not acceptable. Absolutely, you know, guys, when the going gets tough, you want the tough to get going, and you want to know they're in your corner. You want to know they're doing everything they can to get the right outcome. They communicate a lot about it all. They're out there big time, letting people know what they're trying to do and getting, you know, resources marshaled, and it's what you got to try to do in that sort of position. If you're working in a team of 2 salespeople and one's more experienced than the other, and you guys aren't having a good run, then the more experienced one should really be pushing hard, putting out all of the things that need to be done, being really motivated and really challenging the other. When you're a property manager and you're overseeing someone else and you've lost a couple of managements, or you got some difficult tenants, getting in there and being really positive and helping to get the right outcome, break through the log jam, get it done. All those things really just help keep people motivated. When your team is feeling down, you got to get in there and try to help lift and get some wins, get some of the difficult things off the agenda, simplify things, do what it takes to get that victory so people can feel good about it and keep moving in the right direction. And there's no one answer because the circumstances are always different. Components of a victory, obviously, we're on the same page. You know, we're working towards whatever that vision, that goal is at that period of time. Makes it a lot easier. And one of the problems is that people don't always know what they're meant to be working on. A lot of people keep things to themselves, so others don't even know, well, if this happens, is that a good thing? That happens, is that a bad thing? If people don't know those things, then that's not really good. Yeah, we talked earlier, you know, you need to get the right players in the game to win, you know, and if you don't win, because it's the right players that make the difference. And I think that's a regular dilemma of people. Sometimes you got people, the most willing on the team may not be the best ones in that circumstance. And you don't want to kill people's enthusiasm or initiative, drive, but you got to get your A team in the circumstance for whatever it is you're on, whatever that A team is. I mean, that's ultimately our goal, right? Isn't it? Is to get a good outcome and help people lift as part of that, get people to be part of the better outcome, be better as a result of this effort, building people through the accomplishment of tasks, through the accomplishment of goals, through the accomplishment of their ambitions. That's what we're all really on about. Just for those who don't know, this is supposed to be Vince Lombardi. He was the coach of the Green Bay Packers in the 1960s, where they won 8 or 9 championships in a row. He's the most successful professional sports coach, second now behind Phil Jackson, but he was a real tyrant and had a very, very tough way about him.
Winning is not a sometime thing. It's an all the time thing. You don't win once in a while, and you don't do things right once in a while. You do them right all the time. Winning is a habit. You got to play with your heart, with every ounce of fiber in your body. I've never known a man worth the salt who deep down in his heart didn't appreciate the grind, the discipline, and to win, and to win, and to win. It is and always has been an American seal, and that's to be first, regardless of what we do. There's no room for second place. There's only one place, and that's first place. I finished second twice in my time, and I don't ever want to finish second again. But I firmly hold that a man's finest hour, the greatest fulfillment to anything he holds dear, is that moment when he has worked his heart out in a good cause and lays exhausted on the field of battle, victorious.
The law of the big Mo. And they're not talking about mustaches. Momentum. Momentum is all of our best friends, right? You know, it's a salesperson's best friend. The more listings they get, the more people they're meeting it opens, the more opportunities they get. Victories for people give them confidence. So when a leader has some victories, people around them start to believe in them. It's easier to get them to do the next one. It's easier to get the next one after that. Always try to get some victories. In my latest book, because I've written another book, and I talk about that in my career different times when a victory has allowed me to really rev up things because you get people behind you. And early wins, you know, successes, the first 90 days on the job, all those things. You know, looking after a new landlord or a new vendor and giving them a good, quick victory of getting the house ready, getting people interested, knowing you're on the job, all those things, those momentums make it easier to get to the next thing. Getting victories makes it easier to get victories without question. And it's a leader's job to get things going, to get things moving, to get the momentum happening. But they can't do it alone, of course. So, you know, being ready, getting motivated, getting people motivated are all really critical for what we do. And if you can't get people revved up, motivated, then you don't really get the outcomes you want. And that's pretty much a truism. It starts with these small victories, getting people winning those hearts and minds by doing the right things. You start to see some momentum. It starts to build. The rock starts to gather dirt as it goes down. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. The next one's easier. You've paved the way, so the next one rolls down even easier. All those things are just so true. I remember Timbo years ago when he was doing a presentation showed himself pushing a big rock and, you know, trying to get it up the hill. And, you know, and then, you know, obviously we know what happens when it goes down the other side. And momentum is just massive for all of us. Sometimes it's hard to get going, but once it's going, the steering is the focus. And as it says, steering is often easier than starting. Sometimes it can get away from you, but it is a really powerful change agent, momentum. You know, I don't know, any of you watch, you know, you all watch sports. Aussie Rules is a great sport for change and momentum. A team will go on and have 8 of the last 10 inside 50s, or they'll have 7 of the last 10 scores, and then bang, it just completely shifts. That momentum just completely shifts. NBA is like that. It's a game of runs back and forth with momentum. Change is a very powerful agent, you know, and momentum is your driver of that. And, you know, the more momentum you get, the easier it is to make things happen. Sometimes just things conspire to work for you. You know, you get momentum going, you get a lot of people involved, and bang, all of a sudden some really good things start to happen. Before we move off momentum, any comments or questions anyone wants to raise? Anything?
Just that last point is very powerful, can make people look better than they are, because sometimes in, you know, life or, you know, business, whatever it might be, you judge someone based on their results or something, and then you meet them and you think, oh, they're actually no different. I think the momentum plays a huge role in that. It's quite interesting.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, it's funny that, you know, I've seen people, Ian, the same agents win 7 listings in a row and then lose 7 in a row. You know, it's like, it's crazy at times. And sometimes they don't even know what it is. Anyone else have any comments on that?
I think
Okay. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Sorry, I think the interesting one is start with small victories. Most people want to run with scissors. You know, you've got to learn to crawl before you walk. That sort of side of the world to be able to then get the momentum. So there's, you know, Alana, my property manager, she's like, let's just go out and list. And I'm like, we need to get out there and list, but we have to make a plan. So let's chunk it down and do that small victories, and that training for her is going to be really important. So she's slowly making small victories that will come with more powerful change for her.
Excellent.
Bradley, it's Sue.
Yeah.
I just think, hi. I think coming from a sales perspective, speaking about momentum and all the rest of it, so I'm doing a lot of work with Craig Maskell from our office at the moment, and I think at the beginning of the year we had a really good start, and we had some both were busy with listings, and we support one another, and then, you know, this hit, and so things that were going to come on didn't come on, and all that, and it's like really been hard to get up and get that momentum again, even though our results before we went into lockdown were really, really good. And I think from a sales perspective, it's such an emotional role. Because you can do everything right and still miss out. Like, you know, I was referred in, it's a marital, and I was referred in to the husband and to the wife by 2 separate people, and I still didn't get the listing. And I just think, like, even when you're getting referred in and people have, you know, passed on how happy they were with you, etc., when you work for them and you still don't get it, sometimes it's just really hard. And I think that's when the importance of the other person that you're working with, because it's sort of like a bit like a relationship, you know, when someone's down, the other one's up, and when the other one's down, the other one's up, and you can support one another and encourage each other. Because when you sort of like do this 7 in a row and then you lose 7 in a row, it's very emotional and deflating, and you lose a lot of confidence, even when you're doing everything right. So I think the team support and the other people supporting you, and that they believe in you, and they're there for you when you're not doing so bad, and vice versa. I think that's really important too.
Yeah, you've said a lot there, and you know, the messages you've just said, Sue, I've heard so many different times from salespeople over the journey, and I know it's all real, exactly what you've said. And you know, firstly, it's hard to get momentum in sales, and then, as you know, you've said, in situations sometimes it has nothing to do with you, that it drops off, like COVID. All of a sudden, all the, you know, momentum you had, you're back equally in the market because nobody sees any of your listings. And you know, also, I think the issue though around winning and losing is trying to stay level and consistent about it as much as possible, not getting too up with the wins, not getting too down with the lows. The losses and the lows is really important. I know it's easier said than done, but that's the real success, I think, of the big performers, is that they do stay pretty even. They don't get carried away with the results, and they don't get carried down by the losses. I think if you can know that you're doing the best job that you can, that you're putting your best foot forward, it goes a long way. I think when you are on a losing streak, you got to stop it. You got to change what you're doing. You got to reflect on it. Why are we losing these listings? It's not really just coincidence. We've lost several in a row. Something's playing against us. Others are using it against us. Our attitude has changed. Maybe we're going in smelling a little bit desperate. You know, mix it up, get a different player involved, try a slightly different approach, you know, mix things up. Don't allow a losing streak to continue. You know, I think the great agents, the great sporting teams, when they do lose, they work really hard not to lose again in a row. or if it's 2 in a row, they absolutely do their best not to have 3 in a row, just because you don't want to have that downer and that lack of momentum. Supporting each other, as you said, and one bringing up the other is critical, because we can't always be both up at the same time. Although if you have a situation where one is having to bring up the other a lot, then that becomes very taxing. It's not a healthy relationship. As long as it's kind of mutual, even, we help each other, we both bring each other up, we don't bring each other down, is good. And I think if it's a focus on bringing each other up, then that's always pretty healthy. Just, I think the major message there is trying to be consistent and try to mix it up. If you are on a losing streak, fix it. We got to change what we're doing. We got to change the way we're going in. We got to change our approach. We got to recognize that others are using it against us. Something's going on that's causing this to happen. I know when, going back to CAV matters, a couple of the agents, Blackburn, Canterbury agents who were most affected, had a few losses in a row when it hit the press December, and they had to absolutely change it up to win a listing. They couldn't just not talk about it. They had to be proactive and get back in the face of people, because what was happening is agents were using it against us behind our backs. Vendors are reading about it but being embarrassed to talk about it, so they're just saying no. You had to just, and we did change it up. We told the guys, go in there and put it in their face. You may have read or seen information about CAV. That matter happened 3 years ago. All of our policies, procedures have been changed. It happened all over Melbourne. We weren't doing anything different than anyone else. You have my full assurance. We're completely compliant. Blah, blah, and it worked. It changed it up. It just took it off the negative agenda. It still doesn't mean we won every listing, but we broke the down cycle for a lot of the guys who were having too many in a row. They were losing because of it. All right. Law of priorities. Oh, we have a Covey quote. Very good. Prioritize your priorities. Don't get caught up in quadrants 3 and 4. Live in quadrant 2 as much as possible. Quadrant 1 where you have to be, but not quadrants 3 and 4. The law of priorities is focus on what really matters. Leaders understand that activity is not necessarily accomplishment. I tell people when I'm coaching them, don't worry about how many calls you make. It's how many connects you make. Calls are activity. Connects are calls are just something you're doing. Connects are actually activity that's gonna be something. A lot of people, I use this example a lot. I could put two salespeople next to each other, and they could make OFI callbacks, and they could call the same list of 30 or 40 or 50 buyers, and one will get 4 appraisals and one will get none. One will end up with having spoken to 37 out of the 50, and the other spoke to 18, but they both called every number. It's the real effort that you put in that makes the difference. It's not the task. It's not that. It's the actual effectiveness of what you're doing is what matters. You're doing what's really required to get the right outcome. In my 7-point plan of being successful, when it comes to, I think it's point 5 about winning the listing, do what's required to win the listing. Within the bounds of the law and ethics, do it. Work really hard to win your business. Work really hard to have a really effective team around you. Work really hard to have somebody who's not doing their best to do their best. Put that as a priority and do what you have to do. What's going to get you the best bounce for the buck? What's going to be the most important thing you can do to when I work with salespeople, I focus them on OFIs, getting their OFIs really good, their callbacks really good, then work on your database, because that's where a lot of the stuff comes into, then work on your service area, work on your vendor management, then we start working on that. But what's going to give you the best return? For a salesperson, the more doors they get into and the more they list, the more is going to give them the best return. So focusing on those things that's going to do that is just massively important. Developing a staff member under you so they can be as productive as possible is going to get you the best return. I say to directors, if you spend the next 3 weeks prospecting and you get a listing or two out of it, great. What if you spent some dedicated time on recruitment to recruit your next really good salesperson who's going to write 300,000 over the next year and $1 million over the next 2 or 3 years? Isn't that going to get you a better return than just working on your next listing? Certainly as a director. What's going to get you your greatest return? What gives the greatest reward for your effort? A little bit similar. Biggest bounce for the buck. We've talked before with Covey stuff, but effective and efficient isn't the same thing. Efficiency usually means getting something done with the least amount of resource. Effective is getting the best overall outcome. So for example, you're selling someone's house and you can get them, they want to get an agent for less commission. They want to spend less on advertising and they get less money in return. The most effective thing for a vendor is to sell the house in the time frame they desire at the best net result financially. Those are the two best outcomes. Those are the effective outcomes for a vendor. Same for a landlord. You know, I say to the people who are managing my investment properties, I don't want vacancies. I don't want to worry about an extra 10 or 20 bucks a week and miss out on a month of rent. Just get me a tenant. Let's get it filled as quickly as possible. Effective is really, really important to focus on. That's pretty funny. Making decisions. We are expected to make decisions, you know, all the time. When you're running a campaign or you're a property manager, you're making decisions all the time. When you're an office administrator, every day you make decisions. You know, sometimes if a director doesn't like a decision I make, I'll say to him, you know, fair enough, but I've probably made 700 of them this week. I'm sorry you didn't like one. You know, oh, I forgot to run that one by you. What about the other 300 that I've made in the last 3 days? You know, we make decisions all day. It's what we do. We resolve things all day. When you're running campaigns, when you're running as a property manager, when you're running an office, when you're running accounts, you're just making decisions all day. It's what we do. And when you don't make decisions, things just build up. Things don't happen. Things don't get done. People can't do their job. Everything comes grinding to a halt. And we have to get those things implemented. No use having ideas that don't get implemented. Remember, idea and implementation? So there's different ways that we do go through and make decisions. And it affects things, you know. If you don't take the right approach, you may well lose getting it done, even if it's the right thing. People just back off. They're not interested. They don't like what you're suggesting or how you've suggested it. It affects the way it's implemented. Of course it does. Who's involved? When do you want it done by? Who's all gonna help? What's your role in helping get it done? Are you gonna abdicate? Are you gonna stay involved? All these things. Wow, that's a little bit rude there, Sarah. All right. Can you get buy-in or not? Do you get the law of buy-in going for you? Sometimes every one of these styles is appropriate, and other times it's not. In times of crisis, autocratic styles have a lot more flair and flavor, because often when it's a crisis, you need to make decisions quickly. and you need to be authoritative to get them done. And sometimes being autocratic isn't a bad thing. Doing it in a vacuum where you're not listening to other people, you're not reading the signs is not good. But sometimes there's a call for being autocratic, and a lot of times there isn't. But in times of crisis, in times of onset of COVID, things like that, being autocratic is a necessary thing. People need to understand this is not a fire drill, this is a fire, and you're going to do what I tell you. Consultative approach is probably the best, all around 80-20 rule approach. Consultative is talking to the appropriate people, getting them involved as you can. I always like to say that I like to take a consultative approach, but in the end of the day, leaders need to make decisions. You don't run a democracy, you run a business. And if you do it in a vacuum without other people's involvement, you probably won't get a lot of it right. You won't get buy-in. You'll burn off people. But if you consult, you talk to the right people, you weigh up the pros and cons, you do your SWOTs, and you come up and say, all right, take it all in. Here's the pros, cons, etc. And I've made this decision. Let's do it. And you'll usually get a good outcome. You usually get buy-in. People know that you've taken time to consider what they've raised, and you've done it fairly. And as a result, time to move and do something. And that's why when people do take a consultative approach, it's important to go back to people to let them know why you've made the decision. You haven't ignored what they've said. You've taken it all into account, but there's some factors that they weren't aware of, such as A, B, and C. Or, yes, it was a good idea, but we think this is a better idea overall. We've taken your idea and we've morphed it. We really appreciate your idea, but we're going to put it on the back burner for the moment. Your idea was fundamental to what we're doing. I need your involvement. All of those different sort of lines. I'm a really strong believer in a consultative approach. I think you win the most with that, and I encourage you guys to think that. They always say that nobody knows the job as well as the person doing it. And so the more people who can participate in your decision making, as long as it doesn't become a toothless tiger committee, as long as it doesn't become a lack of reason to make a decision, paralysis by analysis, all those things, then these consultative, participative approaches are helpful. As I said, it's the circumstance that determines the best way to decide. But ultimately, my experience, if a leader is not prepared to make a decision, then you lose momentum, you lose buy-in, you lose belief, you lose a lot of the things that Maxwell talks about. And it is really important that a leader is not seen to shy away from making the decision or the hard decision. So take a few minutes to look at your own style. How do you tend to go about making decisions? And what about those that are around you? Do you feel that they confide in you, consult with you, ask you to participate? Are they autocratic? What do you work best with? What do you think you're best at? Just give a bit of time to just work your way around those questions, and we'll just discuss it briefly when you come back. Would anyone like to share anything that about these questions, and what any of them, what works best with you, what you try to do, Sandy?
I will, Bradley. We've just gone through a whole process, probably via Zoom meetings. We've been talking about wanting to raise our profile as property managers to be able to gain more business. Where we are, it's quite difficult to actually gain business because there's a lot of people that don't rent their house out, it's owner living. So we wanted to raise our profile and how we could do that. And it was something that the team was actually really on board about. I sort of came up with the idea first, but then from there, what we did was we threw it open to the three of us, came in with I lead it to where I want it to go, but get the whole team on board, brainstorming what we think is important and then categorizing and then pulling that apart and bolting on what we need to do. We're about to present a presentation to Scott and Glenn about the whole thing. As a property manager, it's a little bit different for sales. Yeah, we do run our own portfolio. So in regards to a lot of that, we make the decision and we bounce it. It's probably when it comes down to some of the tricky stuff that you would sort of bounce off somebody else. But as a team collectively, we normally run with it, but it's normally me that's sort of steering the ship a lot of it, and because the other two are probably not as experienced in real estate as what I've been in for now. So, but they get very excited, get very on board. They buy in a lot and they like to see where it's going because they're both millennials. So they love the idea of video and all the rest of it. Me, I just, that's a whole, but yeah.
Sorry, Sandy. It's not surprising that you, with the experience and that, lead from the front and have more of the ideas, and that makes sense. Keeping them involved is really important. Letting them know that their views are important, and if they have ideas or thoughts that at any time that they think might help advance the department, to bring them up with you. All those things are encouraging and good things to do. Thanks, Sandy. Anyone else have comments?
Yeah,
Okay.
Bradley.
I'll let Mike go.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Thank you. It was an interesting experience looking at these questions. I ran a gymnastics club for a few years, and we had a changeover of both GM plus our accountant, and it was right around the time that our whole award for all of the coaches and staff changed as well. So there was a lot of technical detail there, and I think getting back to what you were saying before, you don't have to have all the answers. And I think in that situation, consulting people for expert knowledge, bringing in external consultants and that type of thing before making ultimate decisions was a very valuable way of approaching it. And I think having everybody buy in, as you said, made that transition a lot smoother. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what leader does, like you identify the resources, who needs to be involved. Do we have the right resources? Do we need to go outside, find out more? Do we need to bring somebody in to help us? That's what the leader does. But ultimately, it's about getting the right outcome at the end of the day in the most effective manner you can. And when you do that, you've done a good job. And, I get called all the time for, let's say, employment questions, and I will be able to answer a lot of them. But then at times I'll say, that's really a lawyer. Right. Somebody needs to mute their mic. Sometimes I need to say, I need to call an employment lawyer. I'm just not 100% sure. Let's do that. Today I was saying to one of my people, let's go and speak to this supplier about their opinion on this, because they might have some insights we don't have. So look, I fully agree with that, Mike. That's the role of the leader, is to make sure you got all the resources you need to make the right decision and the best decision to get buy-in. Sarah, I think you were going to go.
I was just going to say, if I have to make a decision that relates to CT, there's pretty much no chance that I wouldn't consult Amy before I do anything about it, because, she works in it on a daily basis, day in, day out. And I think it also goes to the competency of the person within your team as to whether you consult them. Similarly, like if it's anything to do with customer service, I'll go to Cara, or comms to Beth, you know, anything to do with branding. Probably in the past, you know, there was previous people in the team, I'd probably say more so in CT, where I'd be less likely to go to them simply because, you know, they may be less experienced or maybe less interested, as you know, to put in the work to sort of make a better decision. And I would say probably most decisions that we make, if it's to do with, you know, things that affect, you know, ideas that we want to do, we generally put it out to the whole team just to sort of, you know, get that discussion going. And, you know, like you probably said before, you know, more heads are better than one. And, you know, if you put it out there, you're going to get more ideas than if I just sit there trying to think of it myself. And yeah, I mean, there are only other times I would say that there's things that are different is sometimes when you really know, like when we moved to Trello, that was really hard to get buy-in, and that took a lot of persistence probably on my part to actually sort of go above the team and get it in place so that they could understand it and get on board. And the last thing I'll just say is, how freaking cute is this kitten?
I'm not on your screen. I'm not seeing you for some reason.
Anyone see him? He's so cute.
Where are you? I don't even have you on my screen. Are you even in this class, Sarah?
Oh, well, I'm talking a lot. Anyway, he's super cute. And he was just sleeping. Now I've woke him up.
There you are. You've moved. Oh, yeah, really cute.
Okay, that's all I'm saying.
Very cute. Yeah, well, seeking out experts who know the job better than you do. The more people you consult with, the more minds. And, you know, we're all different the way we think. What do you know, I'd ask you a question. It's not one of the tasks, but what circumstance do you think best in yourself as an individual? Do you think best quietly on your own? Do you think best when you're reading? Do you think best when you're talking to people in a brainstorming session? Like, when I know for me, being verbal is when I come up with most of my ideas. When I'm talking to other people about things is when I have the most creative thinking, not when I'm sitting quietly, just sitting here. I'm a bit like Homer Simpson. When I just sit, nothing moves. I'm better when I'm talking. What's best style for you? Let's continue on this sort of leadership style. Who else has any comments or questions?
Yeah, Bradley, we had an interesting one the other day. Our situation is we've got two offices, one over one side of the hill and another one over the other. And in the sales meeting, one of the prominent salespeople suggested that they would like the opportunity to go over the other side of the hill and list and sell over there. And he'd obviously canvassed a fair bit of support directly leading up to the suggestion. So opened it up for a bit of discussion, and I said, well, it's a little bit unfair because the people over the other side of the hill aren't here. So we would like to we'd like to involve them in that as well. So let's suggest that if you want to go down that path, then you go and talk to those guys, and we'll get a bit of feedback from them. And I'll keep out of it, and then we'll meet together again on Friday. So we'll give it a week, and we'll talk about it. Well, 35 salespeople, only 2 of them went and talked to the other salespeople. So we didn't think it was a good move from a management business owner's point of view. So on that basis, we shut it down. We said, look, no one's been over there. We checked with the guys this morning before the meeting, and no one's,
made the effort.
Bothered. But yeah, so really what it was this one guy was pushing the barrow for himself. But because we were able to sort of stop it and not force a vote where he would have got a bit of traction, we were able to shut it down. And I think we made the right decision in the end, because everybody had a voice. It's just that no one was going to get caught up in the moment sort of thing,
Yeah, they weren't walking the talk in the end of the day about what they wanted. Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Morgan. Any other comments about this part? What about that thinking style I asked you a minute ago? I mean, who's taking time to think about their thinking style? I mean, it is important to know when you're best, in what circumstance, in what sort of situation are you best at? You know, I know, like, all right, Harley sends me, my CFO sends me really complicated spreadsheets with this many notes. I'm an accountant. I could read through them all, but I always say to Harley, let's set up a time to work through it and you take me through it. Because I feel like he's going to cut out 80% of the time I have to spend, and he's going to hit all the salient points that matter. I don't have to read every single number to know what he's on about. I know that if I have an idea or a need, I will get on a Zoom or normally get in a meeting with 3 or 4 people and talk about it. And the more I talk about it, the more ideas come to me through synergy and whatever else. I know I'm better that way than sitting around in a quiet area. How are you best? What works best for you? You should know. And I mean, if you don't know, you should figure it out because you want to be at your best. What works best for you? Anybody want to comment? Anyone who hasn't spoken? No one can think?
I was going to say again, but anyway.
Go on, Sarah. Go on.
I tend to be, I like talking in a group, but I do also think about things a lot on my own. And often, like, you know, if there's something going on, like I might think about it at night or something like that, and then come the next day with those ideas and whatever. So that's probably a bit of both for me.
Yep. Anyone else?
I think Bradley,
you go in.
Mike. Okay. In our sales role, I think you need a bit of both. If you're in someone's lounge room, you're going to bounce off ideas of something that they've spoken about. So you'll lead the direction based on what they're saying. So I think you need to be open-minded when you're in there to make a decision and have the information that they're giving you on the spot. You've got to come back to them there and then. You can't just leave it. So I think you need a bit of both in our roles.
Yeah.
I agree with Ian. I was going to say there's times where you're in a conversation where someone will say something which triggers an idea or a thought, and that can get you going. But I find also just quiet time, like walking the dog in the morning or something like that, where you just got no distraction whatsoever, is also a good time to be going over things as well.
Yeah, that first point's that real synergy thing, you know, 1 and 1 equaling 3. Somebody else saying something, it makes you really think. Anyone else got comments?
I am a massive fly by the seat of my pants. I love it. I am a moment girl. All of a sudden I've got an idea and let's talk about it. Let's run with it. Let's see where it all travels, where it goes, what we can come up with. Probably being a woman, I need to use my many words that I'm supposed to use per day. But if it's somebody that's giving me information and feedback, I need to take that away and then think about it and then come back to them. I don't want to give that answer, that boom, punchy answer, react with emotion. So take that emotion out of it and look at the content that they're actually giving me. But if it's an idea and let's run, and I think I'm different in my personal life than I am in my professional life too. Very.
Yeah. Just on the idea and run with it, you just got to be mindful that people only have so much energy for new things and changes. And if you run around too many that end up as being dead end alleys, you might lose the people around you. So sometimes it's worth walking before you run, as you said, taking a few steps, think about it, see if this has got some real legs to it, raise it with a few others, quietly test it out, you know, all those things, which I'm sure is what you do anyway, Sandy. Anyone else got any comments?
For me, I think it well, obviously depends on the situation and the circumstance. Like if it's in sales, if it's my listing, I'll probably make decisions. If it's someone else's listing, I'll be asking them first. Depending on what it is, I'll be asking the vendor. But I think for me, sometimes the pressure, like when a decision has to be made, like something has to be resolved or fixed, I seem to work really well under pressure like that. I'll come up with a an idea or a decision, a solution, an option that we could use. When we're in an appraisal, like the other gentleman was saying, yeah, sometimes you're just bouncing off what the vendor's asking. It just, I think I'm a bit of a chameleon. I sort of, whatever the circumstance or the situation is, it varies so much for me. I don't just have a one style. But, yeah.
It's good. Being a chameleon is very helpful where you can. I'd still probably suggest for most of us, we probably have certain circumstance where we are more able to think through better than in others. Quiet time, writing things down, reading things, talking out loud. Anyway, it's worth giving it thoughts, guys. Before I move on, anyone have anything else to add?
Bradley, as you know, I like to sort of resolve things, in a timely manner, and I get frustrated when someone holds me up. And I understand it's not always, you can't always get the answers straight away. But no, I didn't know that. But particularly when a member of the public's come to me with an issue and I've got to get back to them, and then, yeah, if I'm held up, I get really frustrated. So that's okay. I can deal with it.
Yeah, I know you're a real expediter, Caroline. You just love to get it done. It's a sensor behavior style in another model. It's just get it done, move on. And I love that, and especially in customer service, because the quicker you resolve something, the easier it is to resolve. The better it usually is. The longer it drags on, the more that person is spinning at the other end. So yeah.
There's nothing worse than when you get an email from the next day saying what's going on. You've got to get back to them and resolve it straight away.
Yeah. Well, you and I know you would agree. We're on the same page with all that. I'm the same, and you and I work incredibly well at getting things resolved quickly because we're both the same way. We just know, let's get it fixed.
Yep.
Get it off the plate. Let's just get rid of it. Agree 100%. Thanks, everybody. We're getting near the end. Law of sacrifice. I love this. As Covey says it as well, you have to give up to go up. You have to give up responsibility to take on more. You got to give other people challenges to take on more. You got to let go, or else you never can grow the people around you. You can never do more yourself because you're caught up doing the same thing all the time. And the more you can do that, the more successful you are. And I'm not talking about, you have nothing to do. I'm talking about you keep rising in any role to higher and higher challenges. Use technology to make it easier for yourself. Use subordinate labor where you can get it. Streamline things. Get rid of quadrants 3 and 4. Do everything you can to focus on what's really important in that quadrant 2, quadrant 1 stuff is really important. And the more you focus on your team, making them as good as they can be, the more you spend time delegating effectively, training them, empowering them, then the more you can do and the better your job becomes. I would challenge someone like Ian or any other the salespeople here that there are people around Fletcher's to do pretty much everything you need done that's not dollar productive. And the challenge is just getting them engaged to do it for you, whether it be your sales sec, Christopher, the global team, the marketing global support team, Tracy, Beth. There's ways to get people to help you do everything you need to do at Fletcher's. And the more of it that you get them to do for you, the more you can focus on dollar productive activity. And, and I say that to everyone. I've used the example with Nelson a few times. He used to have to go around and see people's PCs. And as we open more and more offices, he got software where he can look TeamViewer, he can see right in your laptop. He can do things from his desk, and he doesn't have to drive around to go and fix somebody's laptop. He can just sit there at his desk and do it. And he became significantly more powerful by doing that. And that's what it's all about. You got to give up to go up, however you do it. We've talked a lot about lead by example, sacrifice, a lot of things as a leader. You apologize sometimes when you don't really need to. You give up stuff that maybe you really don't want to. You do like really doing it, but you realize it's better if that other person does it from an effectiveness and whatever. Sometimes you give up your best team players because they want to move on to some other team, or you just know that it would really help somebody else to get your ideal assistant that you've trained. All sorts of things like that. Any comment on the law of sacrifice before I move on?
I was just going to say, Bradley, the point you made to the salespeople about, that there'd been people to help them. I always say to my team, if you don't ask, you don't get. So I think the people that, get those things happening for them, make it happen for themselves versus, those who don't.
Yeah. Those who make things happen, those who watch things happen, those who wonder what happened, and I agree completely. I always say, not in a negative way, but the squeaky wheel gets the grease. There are so many support mechanisms at Fletcher's if you just ask, even getting Beth to streamline all your active pipes so it just happens automatically. Getting Tracy to quarterly review your box and dice to tell you what you should improve. Getting Christopher to do 12 things that can be done by him instead of you doing it. Getting all your data entered by spreadsheets and getting the global team to enter it for you. I mean, there's so many things can be done. The days of the guys standing at it open and writing in all their OFIs and then going back and putting them all on the computer compared to now where it's all done digitally. It just happens. In between, we'd say, just give the sheets, take a picture of it, send it to global, let them enter it at night. You come back the next day and you'll have your data. So many ways to do things. The law of timing. Timing is everything. And that's really so true. When do you have to put your mark on something? When do people need you to be out there? What's the right time? When is that momentum needing a kick? When is it time to jump in and stop letting people flounder? When is it time to say, I've had enough? When is it time to, all those things? Is it the time now for us to go forward with this plan? Is it the time to stop doing something else? Is it, it's just critical. It's a tough one too, because in hindsight, you never really know. Because what if we didn't do that? What would have been the result? What if we did it? What if we did it a bit sooner, a bit later? But you got to use your judgment and do what you can. We have this going on right now. We have directors who are anxious for us to have everybody get back to the offices, get everything going as normal. When, number one, legally we can't. Number two, we have to balance the cost versus the revenue. Our sales are still down. Our revenue isn't coming in like it should be. We still can't just be putting everybody on full-time hours and just saying, oh, well, let's just do it. The work will flow. There's a balance. And I'm trying to balance that all, as in I'm sure all the franchise directors are as well. I don't know. I don't have a mortgage on the right answer. But just keep asking lots of questions, keep challenging things. Timing is everything. Timing is what makes things work and not work. Do you take your pitcher out at the wrong time? Do you send someone to the bench at the wrong time? So important. Wrong action, wrong time is a disaster. Right action, wrong time, you get a lot of resistance. We know we need to do it, but people aren't really believing it's right now. Wrong action at the right time is just a mistake. Oh, we shouldn't have done that. We had the right idea, but wrong plan. This is what we obviously want. The right action at the right time, you get success. And it's probably the only time you do. Out of all of them, you choose the right thing to do at the right time within this 80-20 rule sort of thing. And that's the goal of our timing, is to try to think about it, look at our options, consider our priorities, focus on the resources you have, figure out the time that you can get it done, and off you go. Any questions or comments about the law of timing? The law of explosive growth. That's what we want. To add growth, you must multiply your leader quotient. You got to lead leaders. The more effective leaders we have in each office, and the more effective leaders we have in each sales team, and the more effective leaders we have in our property managers and our team leaders of property management in that situation, the more effective office managers we have, the more effective team leaders we have, then better it all flows. And you can get more and more things happening, more and more growth, more and more people being innovative, more and more people doing their job really well, more and more achievers, more and more plateaued performers doing really well, and raising the bar and meeting that bar as it goes up. All those things are just critical to that. So I told you guys the two most important traits of organizations that are the most successful organizations. It's the effectiveness of communication. How much do we synergize? And our leadership quotient. How many people in our organization are effective leaders? And I say that to all of you, that the more people around you that are effective leaders and that communicate effectively, the better it is for everyone. And the more you have in your office, the more you have in your team, the more you have in your company, then the more successful you are. And spending time doing this and teaching as many people as possible about leadership and hoping they go away and they're just that much better. Maybe it's 5%, 10%, 20% better. For some, it's a lot better. Some people have done the course a couple of times and they get better each time. Then all of those things is really positive time. You know, when I help a salesperson, like I coach Ian and Michelle or Stefan or Rob or Andrew now in Glen Iris or Pan, and they say, "Oh, you know, I hope I'm not taking up your time." My answer is always, "There's nothing more effective I could do with my time than help you become more successful as a salesperson." If I'm coaching Adrian as a BDM, there's nothing I could do more to help Fletcher's more than get Adrian to go and win more properties, to help Ian get from writing 300 to writing 400 or writing 500. If I'm spending time with Rob Sheehan or Jason Salan and helping them to become better at recruitment and helping to land another recruit, what could my time be better spent on? So, you know, I think about helping people to be better at their job, helping leaders to become more effective at leading is the most important thing I can do in my job. And so I spend as much time as I can on that, and I encourage others to be doing the same thing. They call leaders math, this issue about exponential growth. You know, the more leaders you create, the more they create, you know, and you get that explosive growth going. Any comments about that? So we want to be on the right-hand side. We want to be on leaders who develop leaders. Instead of need to be needed, we want to be succeeded. We want the people below us to be better than us. We want our children to be better than us. We want our team members to be better than us, to keep growing and doing really well. We focus not on their weaknesses, but on their strengths to maximize those. Yes, you have to overcome weaknesses. You have to eliminate them as a problem, but you focus on your strengths. I might have said this to you guys in one of the earlier sessions, but I think that every job could be boiled down to say 5 main things that it's necessary to do. And the reality is very few people are 5 out of 5, let's say 5 being the best, or 5 out of 5 in all of them. At best, they're usually maybe a 4 or 5 in a couple. There are 3, and then maybe there are 2 and a 2 or something. And a 2 and a 2 is a problem. A 3 is like acceptable, 4 is above average, 5 is excellent. My view is if you have a couple of 1s and 2s, you got to get them up to being 3s, so they're not a weakness. Yeah, there may not be a strength. Maybe paperwork's never going to be your strength, but you're okay at it. It's not a problem. Maybe communicating with clients is a 2 at the moment because you're very shy and you don't take enough authority. You know, you're not assertive enough, and you become more assertive, and you make that a 3 or 4, and you become better at it. And you really want to be really, really good in sales, and you got to make that a 5. And you take your 5s and you go, well, I'm exceptional at client relationships. I'm exceptional about identifying who's the real buyers and sellers. Then that's what you really focus on. You maximize your strengths. You do that as much as possible because that's what you're really good at. And again, so your goal is to have nothing under acceptable. Let's say that bar is a 3. Nothing's under a 3. Work to get over a 3. Maximize, try to get as many 4s and 5s as you can. And if you can do that with the people around you and yourself, then you're most successful. And that is a really simple guide to being the most successful you can be in the respective job. And the goal is to say, well, what are those 5? You know, what are the 5 in my job? You know, and every job can boil down to whatever it is, might be 3 or 4, but pretty much 5, I believe it would boil down to. Develop the top 20. That's your achievers. Focus on that top 20% to get explosive growth. You're not going to get it from your plateaued performers. You're not going to get it from your variable performers. You're going to get it from your achievers. That's for sure. Treat their leaders as individuals for impact. We don't treat people all the same, to be fair and have lowest common denominator. I've said that to you before. People have to be treated as individuals based on what they need, but it can't be unfair. I'm not talking about favoritism and giving somebody more than you're giving someone else. What I'm talking about is a different approach for different people. What's going to work with that person? How do you motivate that person? How do you reward that person? How do you challenge that person? And if you just treat everyone the same, then you just get the lowest common denominator. You don't hoard power, you give it away. The more empowerment you do, the more you create. We all know the better. Spend time with others. Actually invest time with others. Make it worthwhile, the time that you're spending. Make it valuable to people. Teach them a lesson, help them improve. Make sure they get better at something. You know, I don't say this in modesty or false modesty or anything. My hour with salespeople is extremely valuable in that I help them a great deal get a lot better. And those who go away and don't really do the things we talk about, and I mean, that's their problem. I know I'm giving them an immense amount of wisdom in the time that we have. Because I've done it. I've helped so many people become $1 million agents, and I know what it takes, and I know what you have to do to have a great service area, to have a great OFIs, to have a great database, to be really good with your vendors, to run really good opens, to prospect really well. I know all of it. I've written almost all of it at Fletcher's. And so I try to invest that time in those who are squeaky wheels, who have an interest in getting better, and I hope they go away and they really do it. And those that really do it get better. Those that don't get better numbers, I sort of question really, one, their attitude or their aptitude. Are they really doing it, or are they really capable of doing it? Really great leaders are focused on this growth by multiplication. If I can get this person working really well, then they can build their team. I can get this office working really well, they can build that team. That office can then spill into another office, as opposed to just one, you know. And obviously the goal, the ripples in the water, is to impact as many people in the organization as you can, you know, and as many clients as we can, as many people who should become clients of Fletcher's as possible, as many people in the marketplace we can influence. That's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to hide under a bushel. We're trying to get it out there as much as possible and help people as much as possible with growth. Before we leave that, any comments or questions or anything about growth? Our last one, the law of legacy. As Covey says, we want to leave a legacy. And, you know, a leader's legacy really is by their succession. Does the organization continue after they're gone? Or is it a one-hit wonder? You know, have you built a team that can survive you? You know, I can go on a holiday for a month in America in normal times, very comfortable that the people at Fletcher's are doing their job and know how to do their job and don't need me day to day to do the job. I have this theory that you always defer to the person with more knowledge than yourself. So, for example, I'm a competent cook. I can cook a lot of food and a lot of different things. If Sally's in the kitchen, I always ask her everything because she's a much better cook than I am. If she's not there, I just ad lib. I just do what I think I should do. If she's there, I say, hey, how much of this would you add? Would you do this first or would you do that first? Because she's better at it than I am. If I'm not around, people make their decisions and do things. If I'm around, then they think they need to ask me or defer to me. My goal is teaching people to have confidence in themselves, make their own decisions, get on with it. Be successful in your own right. Because I do believe that people always defer to the person who seemingly knows more than they do. We should lead with a long view as much as possible. Sometimes you've got to just deal with quadrant 1s and 2s, quadrant 1s and 3s, but usually 1s. But we should be in quadrant 2 as leaders as much as possible. We've talked a lot about this, but creating a culture where leadership is valued. You want people to make decisions. You want people to be empowered. You want people to feel good about themselves, not feel as if they're in some autocratic system where they can't, do anything. Pay the price today for tomorrow. Invest is what that's saying. Are you investing today for tomorrow? Are you putting away some of your successes and some of the resources for tomorrow? Are you investing in training and learning now so it pays back in the future? Are you recruiting the right people now that might be really successful, in 2 years' time? All of that is what that's on about. I'm not entirely sure what that's saying and whether we captured those words right.
I think it might be a typo. It should be above.
It's above, yeah. Value team leadership above individual leadership. Well, together everyone achieves more. We know what team means, and we should always be focusing on team without question. Do things with integrity, day to day, month to month, year to year. Be able to hold your head up high that you've done the best job you can, that you've created a sustainable environment for your company, for your environment, your community. All those things is just so important about the whole concept of legacy. You want to, as we've said, you want to have a culture that believes in continuity. Tim and Rob made a really, really big decision in the early 2000s to engage me and to begin a succession plan where they realized that the business needed to become bigger than the Fletcher's family. And, at this point in the game, they hold some equity, but not a lot. It's owned by a lot of different people. While it still has family values, it's a corporate. They had the foresight to see that the only way the business was going to grow and develop would to have wider ownership. And there's very few large, successful brands that don't have a lot of ownership by different people. If you want to stay small, you keep it small. If you want to get big, you open it up to lots of people, talented people. And our succession planning program, which I started in 2002, based on the direction that Tim and Rob wanted to head, has been really successful. We've got all these great leaders in the business. We've opened up lots of offices. We got 22, soon to have more offices. And you wouldn't do that if you didn't have a succession planning mindset. It wouldn't have happened. So I think that's really important. Any questions or comments about 21, Law of Legacy? Well, guys, we've actually finished our leadership specific module where we've gone through Wooden and Powell and we've done Covey and Maxwell. We've spent a lot of hours on, the specific topic of leadership, and I hope you guys have found it to be a lot of things. I hope you found it to be enlightening, enriching on your own sort of abilities, that you feel more comfortable now in circumstances of planning situations, of dealing with more difficult people, looking at your own career and your own career progression. It has obviously wide ramifications. I do want to raise a couple of things. That one is, I mentioned before this article I gave you early on about fixed versus growth mindset. If you haven't had a really good read of it, I really encourage you to do so and to share it with your 13 to 30-year-old children and your colleagues. And this is one we didn't tackle, but you've received it. It's the real estate CoreLogic's document. And if any of you think I haven't sent it, tell me. I think I have sent it, but maybe I didn't early on. I'll add it. Well, it's actually a really big document, so I don't think I just add it for the sake of it. I think you've already got it. I'll look back through my emails. Real estate leadership is a document. It's a couple years old now, but put together by CoreLogic, and it's 44 pages about our industry. And I encourage you to have a skim through it, because it's really interesting how all these concepts we've talked about start to play out in our world, and they go through leadership scenarios in real estate. And I encourage you to work your way through that document if you haven't. And I will actually put that as a homework assignment for you to do that. Today's Monday, we're actually going to skip Wednesday because I don't think we're ready. And we're going to do next Monday. We're starting, oh, you got it. Sue's showing it to me. Thank you. I thought you had it. We're going to do, starting on Monday next week, we're going to do total quality service. And I'm away from Tuesday to Sunday. So we're just going to do this Monday, and we're going to do next Monday. And then the following week, we'll commence back Monday, Wednesday. And we've got about probably three sessions on quality, really good sessions. And then, and maybe 3.5, and then one on public speaking, just things about speaking to people. And it's not just public, it's any sort of speaking with people, which is really helpful. So we've probably got 4 sessions left after today, 2 on TQS, 1 on cycle time reduction, and 1 on presenting, something around that sort of number. Any questions, comments, thoughts, anything before we finish up today? Got nothing?
So what was that other document before that one? I can't see.
It's fixed versus growth mindset. And it was sent in the first emails I sent out or in the first diary notes. And also I wanted to show you guys today, one more thing is that with your goals document, which I gave you early on as well in the Covey stuff, if you haven't spent the time to really even reflect back now a bit on your life goals, your big rocks and your smaller rocks, and you can consider 50s and 100s in this category, and you can consider 10s and 25s down here. 10s are a little different than goals, but your 25s, things you really want to do, and think of them as smaller is all I'm trying to get at. They're not really booking a massage in 2 weeks, but some of the goals you want to do that aren't as big as big rocks. Think about those. You should be updating that and thinking about what you want to do. And you had an action plan document I gave you in the first week, you should be looking at things that you want to be actioning and making sure you're filling those in. So I will give you a few homework assignments just to refresh and see that you do between now and then. So we won't meet this Wednesday, and we'll just have Monday next week. We've wanted to go for a while to do the silos tour of Victoria, Northern Victoria. So we're going to head out Tuesday next week and do the silo tour with a couple we're very good friends with. We've booked it all from Ballarat right up to the top of Victoria, then back down through Bendigo for a week. So it should be nice to get out and about. And because of COVID, our daughter Pam's getting married this weekend in New York, and we're not going to be there. So we're not too happy about that, but we're very happy about her getting married. In fact, we're the ones who told her, you got to do it, because she's been wanting to get married for a long time, and they've been putting it off, and they haven't been able to. And, and he's Canadian, she's Aussie, and they want to get out of America. And the only way they can do it is to be married. And they can't go into each other's countries otherwise at the moment. So we're going to have a Zoom wedding in our family, which isn't exactly the thing my wife's looked forward to all her life, seeing her daughter get married on a computer screen, but such is life. So that's this weekend for us. Any comments, questions, anything else anyone's got before we finish up?
Yeah, Bradley.
Hi, Ian.
Hi. Yeah, first of all, just like to say thanks for letting me be part of this program. I'm finding it very, very good and very sort of wide ranging. So thanks very much for that. But what you said, one of the things you said towards the end, that every job can be boiled down to 5 things to do, a list of 5 things to do. That's very pertinent, I think, to my corporation, because I'm working for, it's a large public corporation in water supply and electricity. So it's got a lot of employees, and we actually have that sort of paradigm for part of our performance assessment. We have a list of 3 to 5 objectives per staff member per year, and add to that, there's a list of competencies that they have to meet for certain roles. That's like a scale out of 5 or something.
Yeah.
So that might be like team building, management, listening skills, all those sort of competencies that go with the job. But then outside of that, you've got 3 to 5 objectives that you have to do for your role. And then that's all sort of worked out between your manager and yourself. And it's assessed, it's given a percentage at the end of each year, and that's actually tied to a bonus system as well. So a lot of it's automated, but you can see the basic principles are there. I mean, you said every job can be boiled down to 5 things to do. Well, here's a large organization, and they're doing exactly that. They're giving, 3 to 5 objectives for each staff member to do. So that was very, that really rang a bell with me.
There you go. Yeah, I've always sort of said that to people. No matter what job you're in, you can put it into 3 to 5 categories of what you do to be successful, and you can also extrapolate out, as Ian's done, to tasks and objectives, and But think about whatever it is. I mean, I obviously know salespeople really well, and you think about their job. They've got an administrative component of doing all of the admin and the paperwork around it. You've got a prospecting component of sourcing your whole activity, right? You've got all of your negotiating, communicating skills. You've got all your legal knowledge you have to have around real estate. And you might add there, all your salesmanship stuff about being clever, and that's it. And, you look at it and go, well, I'm not so good at the paperwork. I'm okay. It's fine. I'm pretty good prospector. I've got a lot of momentum. I'm good at keeping momentum up. But where I really am really great is communication with my clients and all of that. I've got really good sales skills. I know how to close a deal. I know how to negotiate a deal. All that. And you just work it out. And in every job, you just think that. And, I've designed national appraisal systems, staff appraisal systems for major law firms, accounting firms. and had to go through and work out all the competencies for all the different roles, and it really does. And I ended up always putting them into certain sections of 3 or 4 sections, and say, well, they all fit into that. They all fit into that, because you can't give people 100 things, but you can. And we have our sales quality checklist, guys, in Maven, which takes you through everything to do in sales. We have a CRM effectiveness in Maven, which is the same thing. They're both Excels that basically tell you everything to be successful as a salesperson, everything to be successful as a database person in sales. And they're all in these broad categories. Same thing. Look at Fletcher's Way. It's broken down into, the stages that we have. You have the whole prospecting, you have your business development, you have your vendor management, your buyer management, and your a client for life. And that's it. The whole real estate world kind of fits into 5 different sections. And I think it's easier to look at things when you chunk them. And it's called chunking up or chunking down. When you chunk up, you're getting into less and less things, like 5 sections is responsible for a salesperson. When I chunk down, there might be a lot of detail in each one of those. And the more I chunk down, the more I get into the detail of the detail. When we talk about quality, we're going to talk about planning and Hoshin planning and how you do things. It's pretty fun. I love the quality stuff. Most people have never seen it, never done anything to do with it. And it's really great. And you really learn a lot. So looking forward to the quality stuff. Any other comments or anything before we click off? All right, everybody. Have a lovely week, and I'll see you next Monday.
You too, Bradley.
Yeah.
Have a great week. Bye.
Everything goes well,
Take care.
Bye, Caroline.